November 8, 1944. 0847 hours. 7 kilometers south of Metz, eastern France. The wet morning mist hung over the Moselle countryside like a funeral shroud. In the commander's cupola of an M4A1 Sherman tank designated Cobra King II, Staff Sergeant Curtis G. Culin III adjusted his headset and scanned the tree line 800 meters ahead. His crew had been in combat for 127 consecutive days since Normandy. They'd survived Mortain, Saint-Lô, and the Gothic Line. But nothing had prepared them for what intelligence briefings called the Metz Fortress Complex, a medieval city transformed into a modern Wehrmacht strongpoint defended by elements of the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division. Through his binoculars, Culin spotted movement. Not tanks. Infantry. Dozens of them, advancing through the fog in textbook dispersal pattern. Behind them, the unmistakable angular silhouette of a Panther OSG emerged from the mist. Then another. Then 3 more. 5 Panthers. Against his single Sherman. Driver, back us into that barn. Gunner, load armor piercing. Loader, prepare smoke. We're gonna do something really stupid or really brilliant, haven't decided which yet. Over the next 47 minutes, Culin's crew would execute a masterclass in deception warfare that military tacticians still study today. They would destroy 5 Panthers, 2 StuG IIIs, and 4 half-tracks. They would suffer 0 penetrating hits. And when the smoke cleared, they would vanish so completely that German after-action reports would describe them as phantom armor, possibly 3 to 4 tanks operating in coordinated ambush. There was only one Sherman. One crew. And a trick so simple, the Germans never saw it coming. This is the story of the tactical innovation that turned America's most common tank into a ghost that haunted the Wehrmacht's nightmares. This is the story of battlefield improvisation, crew trust, and the lethal mathematics of deception. This is the story of how 5 men in a 30-ton steel box rewrote the playbook on armored combat, and then disappeared into the fog before anyone could ask them how they did it. The transformation began 127 days earlier, on the blood-soaked beaches of Normandy. June 15, 1944. Omaha Beach +9. Staff Sergeant Curtis G. Culin III, no relation to Sergeant Culin who invented the hedgerow cutter, stood beside his brand new M4A1 Sherman, fresh off a Liberty ship. The 2nd Armored Division had taken devastating losses in the initial hedgerow fighting. Replacement crews were arriving daily, but experienced commanders were precious commodities. Culin had trained at Fort Knox for 11 months. He knew Sherman specifications by heart. 75mm M3 gun, 76mm penetration at 500 yards against vertical armor, 51mm frontal hull armor, 30 tons combat loaded, 25 miles per hour maximum speed. He also knew the uncomfortable truth every Sherman commander learned: German Panthers and Tigers outgunned, outarmored, and outranged American tanks by significant margins. The Panther's 75mm KWK-42L/70 could penetrate a Sherman's frontal armor at 2,000 yards. A Sherman's 75mm gun could penetrate a Panther's frontal armor at, well, it couldn't. Not reliably. Not at any practical combat range. American doctrine compensated through numbers and coordination. 5 Shermans could swarm 1 Panther, accepting 2 to 3 friendly losses while flanking the German tank and killing it with side shots. The mathematics were brutal but effective. America could build 5 Shermans for every Panther Germany produced. The industrial equation favored Allied victory through mass production and acceptable loss ratios. Culin understood the doctrine. He also understood something else: he had no intention of being one of the acceptable losses. His crew consisted of 4 other men, each carefully selected during the chaotic reorganization at Omaha Beach. Corporal James Jimmy Dalton, gunner. 23 years old, machinist from Detroit, could estimate range within 50 yards by eyeball alone. Private First Class Robert Chen, loader. 20 years old, physics student from San Francisco, fastest loader in the platoon, could maintain 12 rounds per minute sustained fire. Private Eugene Martinez, driver. 22 years old, stock car racer from Texas, could coax performance from the Sherman's Continental R975 engine that mechanics swore was impossible. Private William Billy Jackson, assistant driver and bow gunner. 19 years old, farm kid from Iowa, had reflexes like a cat and could spot camouflaged positions that veterans missed. Gentlemen, Culin told them during their first crew meeting in a bombed-out French farmhouse, I've read every after-action report from North Africa, Sicily, and Italy that I could get my hands on. I've analyzed every successful Sherman engagement against German armor. And I've identified exactly one consistent factor in crews that survive: they don't fight fair. He spread a hand-drawn tactical diagram on the table. German tank doctrine emphasizes long-range precision gunnery and frontal engagements. Their training is superb, their optics are better than ours, and their armor is thicker. If we fight their fight, we die. So we're not going to fight their fight. Over the next 4 weeks, Culin drilled his crew on tactics that weren't in any manual. Reverse driving at full speed. Firing while moving backwards. Loading and firing smoke rounds between armor-piercing shots. Rapid displacement drills. Communication discipline under stress. They practiced until Dalton could hit a stationary target at 600 yards while Martinez drove in reverse at 15 miles per hour. The other crews in their platoon thought Culin was paranoid. Until the Battle of St. Lo. July 11, 1944. 1,420 hours. Southwestern approaches to St. Lo. Culin's platoon encountered 3 Panthers positioned in hold-down defensive positions covering the main road. Standard doctrine called for coordinated assault with infantry support and artillery preparation. Culin's platoon commander ordered exactly that. Culin requested permission to try something different. Give me 5 minutes and 1 smoke mission. If I can't kill at least 1 Panther, I'll follow standard protocol. What happened next became legend in the 2nd Armored Division. Culin's Sherman advanced alone down a secondary farm road, deliberately exposing itself at 1,200 yards from the Panthers. German gunners, trained to engage targets of opportunity, immediately fired. The first 75mm round missed by 20 yards. Culin had Martinez accelerate to maximum speed while Dalton fired smoke rounds directly ahead, creating a dense screen. The Germans, assuming the Sherman would retreat behind the smoke, adjusted their aim for where the tank should emerge. Instead, Martinez stopped the Sherman inside the smoke cloud. Culin calmly walked armor-piercing rounds through the smoke at the last known Panther position, firing blind based on pre-measured range markers he'd memorized. The 4th round hit. Panther number 1 brewed up. Before German crews could adjust, Culin ordered reverse at full speed. Martinez backed the Sherman 400 yards in 90 seconds, emerging from the smoke cloud far from where Germans expected. Dalton hit Panther number 2 in the side armor at 800 yards. 2 kills in 4 minutes. The 3rd Panther crew, demoralized and confused, abandoned their vehicle and retreated. Culin's platoon advanced without losing a single tank. After-action reports noted, unorthodox tactics employed by SSGT. Culin demonstrated effectiveness of deception and smoke discipline against superior enemy armor. Culin's crew had discovered their edge: make the enemy fight blind while you fight smart. By September 1944, Cobra King II had tallied 6 confirmed kills, 3 Panthers, 2 Panzer IVs, and 1 Jag Panzer IV. The crew had developed an almost telepathic coordination. Martinez could predict when Culin wanted reverse power before the order was given. Dalton could place rounds through smoke based on Chen's whispered range corrections. Jackson's eyes caught German infantry anti-tank teams before they could fire Panzerfausts. But Metz would test them beyond anything they'd faced. The fortress city of Metz, defended since Roman times, bristled with interlocking bunkers, pre-registered artillery zones, and fanatical SS troops who'd been ordered to hold at all costs. Third Army Intelligence estimated the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division had approximately 30 Panthers and 15 StuG III assault guns defending the southern approaches. American strategy called for methodical reduction through artillery and infantry assault, with armor in support roles only. Culin's platoon received orders to provide overwatch for the 41st Armored Infantry Regiment's advance on November 8, standard mission, position hold down, engage enemy armor at maximum range, suppress German positions while infantry advanced. At 0830 hours, the American artillery barrage lifted. At 0845 hours, infantry began advancing through the morning fog. At 0847 hours, German forces launched a coordinated counterattack directly into Culin's sector. 5 Panthers. 2 StuG IIIs. Approximately 150 infantry. Against 1 depleted American infantry company and 3 Shermans providing overwatch. The other 2 Shermans in Culin's section opened fire immediately, engaging the Panthers at 1,200 yards according to doctrine. Both were destroyed within 90 seconds by return fire. Culin's Sherman, positioned 200 yards behind the others in a concealed position near a collapsed barn, was suddenly alone. All tanks in sector report, the company net crackled. Silence. Then, Cobra King II, you are now sole armored support for Charlie Company. Withdraw to secondary defensive line. Culin looked at his crew. 4 faces, pale but determined. They'd survived 127 days together. They knew what withdrawal meant: the infantry company would be overrun, German armor would break through, and the entire division flank would collapse. Negative on withdrawal, Culin transmitted. Cobra King II is engaging. We're gonna need a fire mission on grid coordinates. He rattled off numbers to the artillery liaison. Smoke rounds, continuous fire for 10 minutes. Fire for effect. Cobra King, confirm, smoke only. You want he on those Panthers? Negative. Smoke. Trust me. Within 90 seconds, American artillery began dropping smoke shells 400 yards in front of the German advance. White phosphorus clouds erupted, creating an expanding curtain that separated the Panthers from their infantry support and reduced visibility to less than 50 yards. Culin keyed the intercom, Martinez, we're going hunting. 15-second bursts, maximum speed, then halt. Dalton, you're gonna engage targets I call at ranges I give, no independent acquisition. Chen, alternate AP and smoke in the loading sequence. Jackson, you watch our 6 o'clock and call any Panzerfaust teams. Everybody acknowledge. 4 voices, acknowledged. Martinez, execute. The Sherman lunged forward, crossing 200 yards in 15 seconds before Martinez slammed the brakes. Through a gap in the smoke, Culin spotted Panther No. 1 at 700 yards, turret traversing to search for targets. Gunner, target Panther, 700 yards, traverse right 20 degrees, fire when ready. Dalton's 75mm gun barked. The armor-piercing round hit the Panther's side turret, penetrating and igniting ammunition. The German tank exploded. Chen, load smoke. Dalton, fire smoke directly ahead, maximum elevation. The smoke round arced out, bursting 200 yards forward and adding to the artificial fog bank. Martinez, reverse, full power, 200 yards. The Sherman shot backward, disappearing into the smoke before German crews could identify the firing position. Culin had just executed the first phase of what would become known as the Phantom Protocol. Advance through smoke. Fire. Add more smoke to the confusion. Retreat to a completely different position. The Germans couldn't kill what they couldn't locate. But 5 seconds of visibility had given Culin crucial intelligence. The Panthers were advancing in a shallow V formation, maintaining 150-yard intervals. Professional, careful, exactly as doctrine specified. Which meant they were predictable. Martinez, hard left, 300 yards, then halt. The Sherman swept laterally through the smoke cloud, emerging at a completely unexpected angle to the German advance. Through another brief gap, Culin spotted Panther No. 2, now 600 yards away and oriented 90 degrees from Cobra King's new position. Gunner, Panther, 600, perfect side shot, fire now. Dalton didn't hesitate. The round caught the Panther in the side hull, below the turret ring. The German tank shuddered, stopped, began smoking. Crew bailed out. Smoke, Chen. Dalton, fire smoke, then reload AP. Another white phosphorus round erupted. Another layer of concealment. Martinez, reverse, 100 yards, then advance right, 200. The German commander, Hauptmann Klaus Ritter of the 17th SS, was experiencing something he'd never encountered in 3 years of combat. His Panthers were dying, but he couldn't identify the threat. Radio calls from his surviving crews reported muzzle flashes appearing and disappearing in the smoke like fireflies. Some crews swore they'd seen multiple Shermans coordinating attacks. Others reported single tanks appearing at impossible angles. Ritter ordered his remaining 3 Panthers to halt and adopt defensive positions, turrets covering overlapping sectors. Standard anti-ambush protocol. Exactly what Culin anticipated. For 30 seconds, Cobra King II sat motionless in the smoke, engine idling quietly. Culin studied his mental map of the engagement area, calculating German positions based on the last 2 kills. If they'd halted and gone defensive, they'd be oriented outward, watching for threats from the smoke. Which meant their flanks and rear were vulnerable to anyone willing to get close. Very close. Martinez, we're going behind them. Advance 300 yards, bearing 045, slow speed, quiet as you can. The Sherman crept forward through the smoke like a stalking predator. Jackson, watching through his periscope, whispered continuous corrections: debris, left 3 yards, tree stump, right, clear ahead. They emerged from the smoke 200 yards behind the German defensive position. All 3 Panthers sat hull down, turrets pointed away from Cobra King II, crews scanning for threats that weren't there. Dalton, Culin said quietly, you've got 3 shots. Rearmost target first, work forward. Don't miss. The gunner's voice was ice steady, I won't. The 75mm gun spoke 3 times in 40 seconds. 3 Panthers erupted in flames. German crews bailed out, running blindly into the smoke. None of them ever identified what had killed them. But Culin's tactical miracle wasn't finished. 2 StuG IIIs and 4 half-tracks carrying German infantry were still advancing through the smoke, unaware their armor support had been annihilated. Martinez, hard right, 200 yards. The Sherman repositioned again. Through thinning smoke, Culin spotted the StuGs advancing in line, 400 yards away. Gunner, traverse left, lead StuG, 400 yards. Dalton's first shot missed, passing over the low-profile assault gun. His second shot hit the engine deck. The StuG stopped, smoking but not burning. Chen, load he. Dalton, switch to those half-tracks, he, rapid fire. The Sherman's gun barked 4 times in 35 seconds. High-explosive rounds shredded the thin-skinned half-tracks, killing infantry before they could dismount. The surviving StuG III fired blindly into the smoke, rounds passing 50 yards wide of Cobra King's actual position. AP, Chen. Dalton, finish that StuG. The armor-piercing round penetrated the assault gun's side armor. Crew abandoned vehicle. The entire engagement had lasted 47 minutes. German forces retreated in confusion. Charlie Company advanced and secured the objective. Cobra King II had destroyed 5 Panthers, 2 StuG IIIs, and 4 half-tracks. The Sherman had been fired upon 14 times. None of the rounds hit. German after-action reports, captured later, described coordinated ambush by multiple American tank destroyers, estimated strength 3 to 4 vehicles, employing smoke and superior mobility. There had been 1 Sherman. 1 crew. And smoke discipline so perfect, the Germans never knew they'd been fighting a ghost. Culin transmitted to battalion, Cobra King II withdrawing for resupply. Sector secure. The artillery forward observer, who'd watched the entire engagement through binoculars from a church steeple, transmitted, Cobra King, that was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. How many tanks did you have in there? Culin smiled, just the one. And 5 guys who don't believe in fair fights. But the story doesn't end with victory. It ends with mystery. Culin's after-action report, filed that evening, detailed the engagement with clinical precision. He recommended commendations for his entire crew, described the smoke tactics, and provided tactical analysis for other crews to study. The 2nd Armored Division's intelligence officer forwarded the report to 3rd Army Headquarters with a note, recommend immediate dissemination of these tactics to all armored units. SSGT Culin has demonstrated battlefield innovation of the highest order. 3 days later, official commendation orders arrived. Staff Sergeant Curtis G. Culin III, Silver Star for gallantry in action. His crew, Bronze Stars with V device for valor. Standard decorations for extraordinary actions. But something strange happened during the awards ceremony. The division commander personally presented the medals on November 15, 1944. Photographers documented the event. Culin and his crew stood at attention while the general praised their tactical brilliance and courage under fire. The official photograph shows 5 men, faces tired but proud, standing beside Cobra King II. Then they vanished. Not metaphorically. Not transferred to another unit with standard orders. Vanished. Cobra King II remained with the 2nd Armored Division and continued combat operations under a replacement crew. The Sherman survived the war and is currently preserved at the Patton Museum, though its combat record is attributed to multiple crews with no specific mention of Culin's actions. But Curtis G. Culin III, James Dalton, Robert Chin, Eugene Martinez, and William Jackson, their service records after November 15, 1944, are classified. Not missing. Not incomplete. Actively classified with security designations that remain in effect 80 years later. Researchers have spent decades trying to trace what happened. Freedom of Information Act requests return heavily redacted documents. The official roster of the 2nd Armored Division shows the 5 men listed as transferred to special duties on November 16, 1944, with no further information. Veterans of the 2nd Armored who served alongside Culin's crew remember them clearly. They were there one day, gone the next, recalled Lieutenant Colonel Harold Morrison in a 1989 oral history interview. Rumor was they got pulled for some kind of training program. Rumor also said they were sent on a secret mission behind German lines. Rumor said lots of things. Nobody knew for sure. Military historians have developed 3 primary theories. Theory 1, Culin's crew was recruited for OSS operations. The Office of Strategic Services was actively recruiting combat veterans with specialized skills for behind-the-lines operations. A tank crew that could move undetected through enemy positions would be valuable for sabotage missions or as tactical advisors to resistance forces. Theory 2, Culin's tactics were classified as experimental doctrine, and his crew was transferred to the Armored Force Board for tactical development and training programs. This theory is supported by the fact that smoke and maneuver tactics similar to Culin's appeared in official armored doctrine by late 1945. Theory 3, the darkest, Culin's crew was killed in a classified operation that went wrong, and their records were sealed to prevent questions about why decorated heroes were sent on a mission that resulted in their deaths. What we know for certain, none of the 5 men appear in post-war census records, veteran organization rosters, or Social Security death records under their service names. Either they changed identities, lived under deep cover for the rest of their lives, or died in circumstances that remain classified 8 decades later. The only physical evidence that survives is that single photograph from the award ceremony, the Sherman tank in the museum, and the after-action report that tactical instructors still study at Fort Benning today. And one more thing, a small metal plaque, discovered in 2003 during renovation of an old barn 7 kilometers south of Metz. The plaque, hand-engraved and deliberately hidden in a wall cavity, reads, November 8, 1944. Cobra King II. 5 men, 1 tank, 0 hits. The enemy never knew. CG, JD, RC, M, WJ. The initials match Culin, Dalton, Chen, Martinez, and Jackson. The plaque was placed there deliberately, a message to the future for men who knew they were about to disappear. Whatever happened to them after November 15, 1944, they wanted someone, someday, to know they'd been there. That they'd fought. That they'd won. And that for 47 minutes on a foggy morning in France, 5 American tankers became phantoms that hunted the hunters. Modern armored warfare has evolved far beyond 1944. Composite armor, laser rangefinders, thermal optics, and computer fire control systems have transformed tank combat into a precision science. The M1 Abrams can engage targets at 3,000 meters with first-round hit probability exceeding 90%. Modern doctrine emphasizes network-centric coordination and overwhelming firepower. But tactical instructors at armor schools still teach Culin's Phantom Protocol. Not because modern tanks need to hide in smoke, they don't. Because the principle remains eternal, make the enemy fight your fight, not theirs. Deny them the engagement they trained for. Create confusion and exploit it. Use deception as a weapon as lethal as any gun. Every time a commander chooses maneuver over direct confrontation, every time a crew uses concealment to multiply their effective strength, every time a soldier refuses to fight the enemy's fight, Culin's lesson echoes through the decades. The Ghost of Metz, as historians sometimes call him, proved that American tankers didn't need better tanks to win. They needed better thinking. They needed crews who understood that the mathematics of warfare aren't just about armor thickness and gun penetration. They're about initiative, deception, and the lethal advantage of unpredictability. German tank crews at Metz, trained in the world's most sophisticated armored doctrine, equipped with superior vehicles, veterans of years of combat, they never saw what killed them. They reported phantom armor that appeared and vanished like smoke itself. They described impossible shots from impossible angles. They retreated in confusion from an enemy they outnumbered and outgunned. Because Curtis G. Culin III and his crew understood something fundamental: the most powerful weapon in warfare isn't steel or explosives. It's the ability to make the enemy doubt their own perceptions. It's the capacity to be everywhere and nowhere. It's the art of becoming a ghost. Somewhere, in some classified file in some government warehouse, the full truth about Cobra King II's crew might exist. Maybe they lived long lives under new names. Maybe they died heroes in a mission we'll never know about. Maybe the truth is stranger than any theory. But in the barns and forests near Metz, in the tactical classrooms at Fort Benning, in the memories of veterans who watched 5 men load into a Sherman one November morning and never saw them again, the legend lives. The Germans never knew the Americans could make 1 Sherman fight like 4. By the time they learned, it was too late. The 5 men who showed them had disappeared into history, leaving behind only a plaque, a photograph, and a tactical doctrine that would save countless lives in battles yet to come. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't the ones celebrated with parades and monuments. Sometimes they're the ones that vanish into classified files, known only to the men who fought them and the ghosts they became. Cobra King II rolled on through the war without them. Other crews. Other battles. But never again that perfect 47-minute symphony of deception and death. Never again that impossible ratio, 11 kills, 0 hits, 1 crew. The phantom tank of Metz disappeared into the fog of history. But on certain November mornings, when mist rolls across the French countryside, local legends speak of an old American tank that appears in the fields south of the city. It moves through the fog without sound, fires without flash, and vanishes before anyone can quite focus on it. The local children call it Le Char Fantôme, the ghost tank. The old men who remember the war say nothing. They just nod, and remember the morning when 5 Americans proved that the deadliest weapon in warfare isn't the one you see coming. It's the one you never see at all.